Here's Brody Brazil.
You know the Coliseum, the last dive bar, a.k.a. It's one of the eldest venues in Major League Baseball. But funny enough, all of the older ones have received good makeovers. The Coliseum got that bad makeover in, 1995 or so with Mount Davis out there in center field. But we've known it's been a problem for a while. The whole A's situation aside for just a second, the Coliseum has been an issue. But where do you think the Coliseum went wrong? I have an answer. I have my own answer to that, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
I mean, first, it's a multi-purpose stadium. It was built that way. If you look at the layout for the Raiders back in the 60s until they built Mount Davis, it was actually one of the better multi-purpose stadiums, but it wasn't as good for the Raiders as it was for the A's at that time. So in order to get the Raiders back from Los Angeles in the mid-90s, they had to build Mount Davis,
right,
which completely ruined it for baseball. If you go back before then, and I was fortunate enough to see a few games there before they built Mount Davis, it was one of the better views of the Oakland Hills in baseball. So, I mean, they took a bad turn there. And anybody who's built a ballpark pretty much in the 60s, multi-purpose stadium, they've all been replaced now.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say that the turning point for me is actually in the 80s and early 90s when the venue was 20+ years old, and they literally did no improvements to it. Like, there was no upgrades, and obviously the Mount Davis construction was the first big renovation thing they had done at all, but I think it actually got way behind the curve well before Mount Davis, and that was kind of the cherry on top of, uh-oh, this is not really a good baseball stadium anymore. And I go back to that age thing. Age almost doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, Wrigley Field, Fenway Park, those are in a totally different category. But even look at Dodger Stadium. Look at Angel Stadium. Those are of the same era, so to speak, and they have put time and effort and money into those venues, and that's why they're still viable largely.
Exactly. If you look at Dodger Stadium, it's a perfect example. They've prided themselves on keeping it looking the way the day it was built.
Yeah. Some new stadiums get built right next to old ones. And that works in some occasions. Like, look at St. Louis. Busch Stadium was at 2 and versus number 3, I think we're on now. That's just one example.
Park.
Yeah, right. And
Yankee Stadium.
Right.
The Brewers with then Miller Park and County
Field.
Stadium.
Yeah, before that. Yeah. My question's going to be here. What if an A's ballpark was built at the Coliseum site versus Howard Terminal, which I know you're probably very familiar with too? Would a new ballpark at the Coliseum site, would it ever have been as good as Howard Terminal? Like, would that building next door to the old place thing, would that have worked in Oakland like it maybe has worked in other places? Or is that ever even a good idea?
The ballparks now, and if you look at the model I'm going to go with is Truist Park. I don't know if you've ever been there with the ballpark village.
Not yet.
That's where they're going. If you look at I don't know if you've seen the development plans for the new White Sox ballpark.
I have, yeah, beautiful.
In the South Loop there. It's about what's going on around the ballpark as opposed to just the ballpark in a parking lot now. So it really depends if you develop. I think there's potential still at the Coliseum site to develop a nice little ballpark playland with bars and restaurants and have its own little island of day and night life as going on there in and out of baseball season. I think it would be better with London Square and Howard Terminal already down there in that area would be a lot better for that because you already have some of the infrastructure built in. So I think there's potential. You can create whatever you want at an Oakland, the Coliseum site. But yeah, it's the Howard Terminal. I would definitely think has an advantage.
So logistics aside, and I know you were mentioning the Howard Terminal site, and I know you're kind of a connoisseur of renderings too. Like, you enjoy the actual ballparks that have existed historically and the current ones, but I know you're a big fan of when something new comes out and how it's conceptually perceived. What did you think of all the different Howard Terminal renderings, that site, and among other things like in Kansas City or in Chicago? How did that fare compared to what other baseball teams are trying to do?
It's the ones that came out for Howard Terminal are definitely unique. You all recognize the grass that went all the way around the ballpark, up and around. with the almost like gnome-looking hills on it, and it would definitely have been a signature ballpark. I think they didn't use. I mean, it's kind of like the White Sox. Would they want to build a ballpark with rooftops right across from the street? So it's kind of hard for the if they were going to build it in Oakland to make use of the water. But I think you can't be that close and on the water without taking advantage of it. Not necessarily having splash hits as much as say in Oracle Park, but have something that once in every few years is reachable. If that makes any sense.
I don't know if I can call you specifically an Oakland A's fan. I know you've favorably spoken about, them staying in Oakland and obviously getting a good ballpark that, quite honestly, they've never had a baseball-only ballpark in Oakland. But what's your opinion, your take on the whole situation that we're in the middle of right now?
I grew up in Seattle. I've been a Mariner fan my whole life. I lived in California for 10 years after college. Outside of the Sacramento area. So, very close to the Oakland A's. I've been to more games at the Oakland Coliseum than anywhere else except for in Seattle. I've followed the situation the whole time. I have nothing but love for Oakland fans. They're some of the best and most enthusiastic in baseball. It breaks my heart to see anybody after the Sonics left for Oklahoma City. I kind of swore off the NBA. I understand what it feels like to have a team that you followed your whole life get ripped out from you. So I have nothing but love for the Oakland A fans. I think that, you keep seeing the feedback daily that the Las Vegas has not got all their ducks in a row and everything together. So, I mean, there's still hope, I guess, that this falls through. I personally don't think it's a good move for the A's to go to Las Vegas, and I think the mayor and everybody in Las Vegas they would rather have an expansion team anyways. So I think Oakland deserves better. The fans deserve better. I think it could be successful in Oakland with a new ballpark and an owner that actually puts some talent on the field and keeps the talent around.